right, welcome to hour two of the Anti-Media Radio. I'm your host, Jake Anderson, and we have a special show tonight, and it's special for a couple reasons. I don't know if the word is serendipity or not, but we're going to be having a conversation. We have a couple of guests who are going to be opening our eyes about human rights issues, and it's people that have done a lot of research, and it's going to be pretty phenomenal. And it happens to overlap with, we're back in the actual war. Since 9/11, we have been, with the security state, manufacturing reasons to perpetually be at war with countries in the Middle East. And now we have the latest salvo in that with breaking news, and you can find this on the antimedia.org homepage. U.S. launches 59 missiles at Syrian government.
Oh, dear God.
And so we're at war again, everyone. And as usual, with that comes feelings of hopelessness, feelings of what can I do? Why am I at the mercy of my own government? Why can we not stop them from killing other people? And what can we do? And we're going to talk about that, because one thing you can do is to be educated and to spread that education, to talk to others. My co-host DB is going to join me now. DB, how are you doing?
Hey, Jake, I guess I'm just in the exact same mood everybody else is in, which is, we've been waiting for something to pop off, and here it is. Here's the overreaction. And if you're a student of history like me, you know the number one way war starts is that somebody overreacts, and that creates the next overreaction. So we can expect blowback for this, and we can expect it to continue retaliatory measures, and we hope cooler heads prevail. But I mean, how long can they prevail? This has been building up for so many years.
And without politicizing it or getting into, Republicans in office, Democrats in office, when it comes to war, it doesn't seem to matter. It seems like they're all on the same side when it comes to putting money in the pockets of the military-industrial complex. So this is just kind of a never-ending cycle that we're a part of, unfortunately. But one thing we can do is we can help each other, and we can help humans. We can help the most vulnerable among us. And our guests tonight are people that are intimately involved with that effort. Our first guest, and she's frequently on the show, LD. She's a great person. She's a researcher and advocate for children's rights, among a number of things. Thank you so much for joining us, LDs.
Thanks for that warm welcome, Jake. It's nice to be with you again.
Yeah, and you're here with a special guest, and I'm very, very pleased at the kind of information we're going to be imparting tonight.
Very honored, Al, that you were able to get this guest. Thank you.
Well, it's a tremendous honor for all of us that this gentleman, who's been waiting for people to wake up, is willing and able to be with us. It's staggering to me that he and I connected, actually. I don't know if we dive now or if we preamble a bit more. We are at war. So, Jake, what direction do you want to go in immediately?
Well, I think let's introduce our guest, and I'm assuming that we're going to come full circle, and by the end of the show, I think a lot of the different topics will cross-pollinate, and we'll be having a larger discussion about the world at large. But I think for now we can go ahead and get into introducing our guest and getting a feel for all the incredible research you've been doing.
Well, thank you again for that. Although what tonight's going to be focusing on is sort of the recent history, and I say recent meaning the 80s, the 70s, the recent history that will help again solidify the reality of the enormous problem we're facing, which is, Pizzagate was the commercial, pedogate is the future. We are in the midst and have been in the midst of a cancer, and we've only been diagnosed now, at least the vast majority of us. And again, that's thanks to this internet they want to take away from us. And in terms of JT and I connecting, although mainstream media has debunked this to debunking death, it lives online, and Twitter is a fertile, if also censored and very brief place to exchange ideas. And there is traction growing on that platform. People are waking up, and JT, as I said, has been awake for a while, and that's how we came across each other, sharing information. What I've read into scratches the surface of what he's been aware of for quite some time. He was a firefighter on 9/11. JT, correct me if I get any of this wrong, but that was his moment of awakening, I believe.
Absolutely.
Watching what happened. And again, if this is correct, JT, it was your training as a firefighter that allowed you to interpret the falling of Tower 7 correctly. Have I got that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I watched 343 of my fellow firefighters turn to dust on that day, and not to mention the police officers, the ambulance personnel, and just the ordinary guy going to work. And I've never been the same, and I don't think I ever will be. But it did. It's changed everything. It for not just me, but a lot of other people. But it set me on a course which has been very circuitous and strange, and some of it, the information I wish I didn't know. But once you learn it, you have to do something about it, and that's why I'm here. And I'm honored to be on this show with you guys. I follow the anti-media. I read that article you did today on Syria, and here we are at war. So I think I'm in the right place.
You absolutely are, and I think all these issues interconnect. I mean, the way humans treat each other is the issue. It's whether are we humans, and can we be humane to one another? And that takes the form of war. It takes the form of child trafficking, child abuse. It takes the form of, even if we want to get into that, false flags later on, and the truther movement. There's a lot of different angles we can come at, but like everyone else has said, I'm honored to have you here, JT, because there's few people I respect more than, first of all, a firefighter, but then also a firefighter for 9/11 truth. There's you've gone the full mile in terms of serving people around you, and for you to now be devoting your life to truth. You've reached the 9/11 building collapse, child trafficking, child abuse issues. You've spent thousands of hours of researching these issues. I guess maybe an entry point would be now, how where 11. What's the evolution of how you started kind of delving into this new life of research?
Well, I'll try to make it as brief as possible, but because it's such a long story and a convoluted story. But I knew on that day that we all have human intuition, and just watching the events. I was off duty. I was a lieutenant with the fire department in Stewart. I worked in emergency services since '87 as an EMT, then a paramedic, then the fire department fire officer. I went to the National Fire Academy. I mean, much of my career was spent in a classroom, learning about things like building construction and hazardous materials and so forth. And I just knew on that day, especially when 7 went down, that something was not right. And there was that period of grief afterwards. We interacted with the FDNY firefighters. We brought some of them via our union to Stewart, got to know some of them, and it just, it was something that was just we were not going to let sit. And I ended up contacting a bunch of people, through work, through organizations like Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, which is, if you haven't joined them, please join. Firefighters for 9/11 Truth. Eric Lawyer headed that up and still does, kind of, and to a lesser extent. But we all set out, to not only remember the victims, but we knew that the expanse of people, not only firefighters, but police officers and anybody that was around, were going to have health problems after that. That was all over, and they still are. And there's been probably more firefighters from FDNY die since that than actually died on that day from
Right.
Related cancers. So
I don't think a lot of people know that also. I think a lot of people are not even aware of how many firefighters and police officers have died since 9/11 from the toxicity.
I'd like to interject. This is an interview to take notes during for any listeners. You're about to hear some truth.
You're putting the pressure on.
And for the record,
Most respectful pressure.
I'm just kidding.
Moments
And it's
of
truly,
I used-
come home to roost today. I mean, of all days, because
Right.
did it not culminate today with us prodding the bear, which is another nuclear armed superpower? Wasn't that their whole end game? I mean, they want a perpetual war forever, and now they get their big war.
Just insane, But so let me.
I used to have a bumper sticker that said, "What happened to WTC 7?"
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. And Elle and I were talking about cognitive dissonance today, and I had a little definition that I pulled up on the internet, and it's just, that's our problem with all of this. I mean, people, when they see the truth right in front of their face, the explanation for that is so abhorrent that they just can't deal with it, and I was there for a while, and thank goodness I was able to overcome that with a lot of help from a lot of other people and just doing the research. But with all these things, child trafficking, with the wars, with, you just, everywhere you look, I mean, people just, our biggest battle, with what I think what you're doing and, what I do and what all activists, people that care about, people and our world, is that the majority of the people are just so affected by how horrible all this is that they just can't believe it. And I think we're making progress, but that's our, if we can break through that, I think things will change in a major way.
So we can come back to 9/11. I'm always open to talking about 9/11. I'm interested in how you got into the child trafficking.
Okay. Let me try to give you the Reader's Digest version of this. During all that time, I was making contacts with people. I ran across an individual by the name of Field McConnell. He's a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps, and his Naval Academy best friend was Chip Burlingame, who was the pilot of Flight 11 that supposedly hit the Pentagon. And after I got in touch with Field, things just really accelerated, just beyond my control, because he had been in the military. He had connections in the intelligence field, and that's where I started to find out about the intelligence agencies, their methods. One of their methods is pedophile blackmail. That's been going on, believe it or not, since the 1600s in the city of London. So that's where I got into that. And that's seeing that, and it made a full circle, because I knew the intelligence agencies were somehow involved in 9/11. Then you look at their methods, which is basically child trafficking. That pointed me to the Franklin scandal in a book called The Franklin Cover-Up. If you haven't read it, it's free. It's online. It's a PDF That should be required reading for everybody in this country, and that's where it started for me. And it just, I mean, the horror of that, I really can't describe to this date, but it dawned on me. We were trying to direct our efforts towards 9/11, and then, as I was seeing the bigger picture, and then especially with what was going on in child trafficking, it's like, you know what, if we don't do something about this, none of this other stuff is ever gonna, because that was the explanation. How could a government be involved? How could people look the other way? How could all this stuff happen? And well, if you're getting blackmailed, with something that you've, obviously you would go to jail for, and trafficking a child or having sex with children and all the other horrible things that they do to these kids, of course they're going to be influenced. And that's the point of the whole thing. That's why the intelligence agencies use this, is to control people. So that's how I got into it. And
unbelievable. And that's the question people always ask when you talk about 9/11. You go, well, how could so many people, how could there be so many people involved, and how could they not say anything? Well, that's how. It's through blackmail.
Absolutely.
It's an incredible connection that I've actually never, I'm not going to sleep now tonight because I never made that connection before.
Yeah, I've had a lot of sleepless nights over this information, and believe me, it's a dark hole, and I'm sure you're pursuing with what you guys are pursuing. You're going to pursue this, and after you read the Franklin cover up, and it's got an accompanying book, the Franklin Scandal, that was a little bit better researched, and Nick Bryant has all these documents from the state investigation in Nebraska. You will really, I mean, I almost hesitate to recommend it to people because it's very dark, and you have to take care of your mental health when you're going through this, because it's something that's deeply affecting. I would talk to Elle about this too. I mean, just the work that she's been doing recently, it's very hard on the psyche.
I'm convinced that's why they call it woke, because literally there's no more sleeping.
Yeah.
There's just some breaking news that's actually
telling you how did.
Oh,
yeah, go.
Sorry to interject.
No. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, with these missile hits, the breaking news, it's unsubstantiated, but I guess Russia moved their troops out, so they didn't suffer any casualties. But yeah, man, I just wanted to bring that up because that's at least somewhat positive.
Okay,
so that's interesting.
I was just thinking, and I was just, there's a similarity between you mentioned cognitive dissonance, and I love that phrase, but there seems to be a similarity to me in the way people emotionally process 9/11 and emotionally process child trafficking. There's a similar level of cognitive dissonance where people say to themselves, oh, this couldn't actually be happening. This is too horrific. And I think the two are very similar in many ways, is that this is a larger than life evil that people just cannot seem to come to terms with, even though we have so much evidence. We have a history of evidence of what humans can do to one another. Why would you think the government would not do that to their own people in order to strategically gain? And of course, with pedophiles, it's a known condition. It's known that people do it. Why would you think that there are not pedophiles at high levels of power that will do anything they can to get away with it? And so, having said that, I'm interested in how your two work overlapped, Elle Deeds and JT. How did you guys meet each other and start start sharing resources?
I'll let you answer that, Elle.
Well, there's been, I feel sort of not confused, but eyeballs deep all the time. So to answer the moment we crossed paths, I can only tell you it was on Twitter. What the hashtag was, or what the article was, or however the spark occurred. The thing that's miraculous to me is that this thing, at least in the context of the existence of myself, JT, you, and DB, has reached a moment where total strangers are sharing phone numbers and getting on the phone to discuss what the hell has been going wrong for decades. And I find it a real bright light in a sea of dark that took place. And I hope it's happening elsewhere. And I hope it encourages anyone listening here to understand that you have to take it offline. You have to risk the disbelief, dismay, disgust, the end of a friendship. You have to risk it. It's worth it. You must talk in reality to people about this. Anyone who's aware of it, it's incumbent on you. You have a moral obligation to talk about it.
Absolutely. And these victims that are out there, that's what they're waiting on. And
Exactly.
we're seeing, and I'll just talk a little bit about the Franklin case in particular. I mean, they had four, and you can go on YouTube and watch these depositions that these damaged children gave, and they were almost adults by the time they gave them, and they're just, they're horrific. The Paul Bonacci has multiple personality disorder, which is common among kids that were abused, and actually the CIA was researching that when they were doing mind control back in the 50s. But these kids that are sexually abused at that age develop the personalities to deal with it. So, so you had these, they were brave enough to come forward, and the investigator for the state, Gary Caradori, who lost his life with his son in a suspicious plane crash over, it just happened to be the county in Illinois where the sheriff of that county was the police chief in Omaha, whom was being investigated by the committee. So that's where Caradori's plane crashed with the goods. Just another one of these coincidences. But the children that came forth, and the FBI went in there, went after these kids, got them to recant these depositions, and destroyed the whole case. And that's our federal government, because they knew it went all the way up when Franklin Blue, that was a credit union. It was linked to Washington. They had call boys in the White House. I mean, the Washington Times researched it pretty good. It's all in the book.
That was in 89, Bush-Reagan White House.
Yes,
Sorry to go on.
Absolutely. And it went all the way there. So the FBI hatchet team came in there, went after these kids, and actually got them to recant everything. So then it was like, it was a carefully crafted hoax, But before that had all happened, Caradori had gotten the depositions, had gotten these kids on the record, and they didn't necessarily even know one another that well. But the depositions proved that they were telling the truth, and it's brought out. Nick Bryant brings it out really well in the Franklin scandal too, and you really have to read the book. But the fact that and that's the pattern. And another case we're going to talk about tonight is the Finders, which is equally as horrible, but just unbelievable. And you have a document from the U.S. Treasury Department written by Agent Martinez that documents this. I might read a little bit of it to you just to give you an idea of what he's talking about. He went in there. They've got an active investigation that shows this is like the Walmart of child trafficking that they've uncovered. And with one call from the CIA, the whole thing shut down. Nobody goes to jail. So that's kind of what we're dealing with.
I'd like to give Alicia Owens a name check. She was one of the survivors of the Franklin scandal. And actually, she was sentenced to a longer sentence for perjury than the Larry E. King figure, who actually ran the billion-dollar bilking of the credit union in addition to the child trafficking ring.
Absolutely.
So for having the courage to not recant, the courage to come over out in the first place and not recant, her punishment was deeply symbolic.
Yes, and this, you'll read it in both of those books. This was so ingrained in not only the local government, it was the police chief of Omaha, it was newspaper people in Omaha, it was the attorney general's office. I mean, and then like they needed help, they were getting help from the FBI to shut this thing down. I mean, that's hopefully what people need to know and will get their minds around, is that this network touches people. There are people in your community right now that are involved in this, and they're in law enforcement. They might be in the fire department. They might be at the post office. But these networks are nationwide and they're global, and they're perpetrated by people that you know, and it's been going on for so long. You know, we and if we don't come together as a group to end this, it's just
it doesn't
not,
end.
It
doesn't end without us all. I'd like to just mention that in the course of casual, if it can be called casual, dialogue on Facebook online about Pizzagate/Pedogate, I've had, I don't know, half a dozen people have come out to me, a total stranger, and said, I was molested by this guy at an Air Force base, or my molester was a professor. Like, it seems like everyone who has this secret, it seems to always point in the same direction. No one's saying my sick uncle in these conversations. They're saying I was taken somewhere by someone in a uniform or someone I knew to be in uniform, which I find deeply disturbing as well. They're waiting for us.
Absolutely. Just recently in Louisville, my stomach was turning, and the good thing is they're prosecuting these guys. These were Louisville cops that ran an Explorer program for young kids.
Yep.
And they were not only photographing them, making videos, traffic. I mean, it's an epidemic. I mean, it's beyond people. That's another thing that people just can't get their head around, is that it's in every community.
Right.
You know, I don't think there's one that is not affected by this in one form or another.
It's so important that we believe the victims, and that's something I want to
Yes.
broach as well, because it's one thing. There's so many of these, quote, red pills to swallow, right? First of all, if you're willing to grasp this might be real, start there. And then if you come across someone who self-identifies, I've found personally it to be challenging to allow myself to believe that person's testimony. Like, it's too close. If it's a real human that I can look at and talk to, but it's necessary to believe them. That's part of how this goes on, because they're not believed. There was a mocked up epidemic of satanic imaginings in the kids who came forward in the 80s and the 90s. The media cover-up turned their testimony into some sort of mass delusion.
Yep. And look at the guy. I'm gonna send you guys a PDF. It's from that same Finder's file about Colonel Michael Aquino.
Oh.
And maybe some of you know who he is, but this guy is walking around free. He's a lieutenant colonel. I think they finally retired him out of the Army. He ran PSYOPs. He was in the Phoenix program in Vietnam. He did mind control experiments. Was implicated in a huge child abuse scandal in San Francisco, the Presidio. You know, you Google the Presidio sex scandal, and nothing happened to the guy. Nothing. He's walking around. He's the head of the Temple of Set, which is a satanic temple in California. He's declared himself a baron in Scotland. I mean, the guy's walking around.
There's actually an Oprah clip or episode from, I guess, the 80s, based on the hair, with Michael Aquino, with his dramatic eyebrows and sort of otherworldly Star Trek villain, presence, with his little uniform of Temple of Set, I suppose. So this man exists. He's
moved on. He's moved on from the Temple of Set. If you want to know what he's up to recently, just you should DuckDuckGo, don't Google, but DuckDuckGo Douglas Dietrich with the last name like Marlena and then Michael Aquino. You'll pop up some podcasts. You'll figure it out, man. It goes beyond Satanism and beyond the Temple of Set. It's really dark, deep, creepy, evil stuff.
Yeah, and look at the when you run into this with people, I mean, show them that, and look at this guy's CV. I mean, it reads like, some sort of, huge asset to the United States Army, and the fact is, all this guy is his real business. All the schools he's run, all the education he's been involved in, he's a monster that was manufactured through the United States Army and sanctioned, apparently. I mean, like they didn't know what he was doing and what was going on. So
Presidio is an outrageous wrong. I'm surprised there wasn't an uprising on the part of personnel whose children were, I don't know, infected with STDs.
With HIV.
Oh, God.
Not only that, but it infected the entire United States blood supply because children's blood is assumed to be clean, and some of these kids eventually went on to donate blood with STDs they didn't know they had.
So there is nothing that these people aren't capable with, and that's what we need to realize too. I mean, the human life has no value. If a child's life has no value, where do we go from there? And Elle and I were talking about this, and that's why it's. I hope everybody makes, because there's so many big issues. There's global warming. There's the wars going on. There's 9/11. There's every sort of horrible thing going on in the world. But if we don't address this, I don't think we're entitled to a free society. I don't think we're entitled to the protections of the Constitution. And believe me, if we don't deal with this and bring these institutions down, we will not have those protections. That's where we're headed,
Exactly.
So
it does sound like a cancer right at the heart of the American psyche. And I think one of the narratives that's relevant here is how it's been decoded, and if you want to call it a psyop, how it's been diverted through the media. And so I was interested in something, LD, you said earlier at the gate about how Pizzagate has, how that's now different from Pedogate. And I asked DB a question last week, and very rarely do I ask DB a question that he's unable to answer. And he could not answer this one. And it was, why in the hell did Alex Jones go out of his way on InfoWars last week to retract the Elefante's claim? What is going on with Pizzagate? Is this just a giant psyop, a limited hangout to protect others? What is going on with that? Please, someone answer me. Why is the guy, and I'm not an Alex Jones fan particularly, but he was one of the leading alternative media voices that was bringing light to the story, and then he completely retracted what he was saying. Is there a concerted effort going on right now to control the media?
Let me add this. Alex Jones, I didn't know him either before now, but I will say that he has sidekicks or assistant anchors or somebody. There's a woman with long hair, and there's a guy named Paul something Jones. He works off a handle called Prison Planet on Twitter, and he was on a roll yesterday. These people are coming out of the Alex Jones University, all right? So take
Paul
it with
Joseph Watson.
Thank you. And what's the girl's name?
Watson.
The girl's, God, I don't know the girl's name. But, if you want to know a lot about Alex Jones, look up Joe Biggs because he fired him.
But wait, let me get back to just the coverage provided out of that outlet, which refutes his elaborate apology the other day. This one clip came out yesterday with Paul Wesson Jones, and it's the world is run by pedophiles. If you got 15 minutes or know anybody with 15 minutes, make them watch it. He draws the lines between us, the pedocracy in Britain, backwards into our history and some of the things JT's touched on.
That's the thing.
Britain is filthy with the same issue. I mean,
they institutionalized it with those boys' schools.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And what culture is invading Britain and normalizing child brides as young as 9? I hate to bring religion down, but unfortunately, there's a part of that religion that's an ideology at this point. It's like a sect, and it's spreading. Yeah. And part of that culture is the normalization of child molestation and rape.
Yeah, and it's dueling control systems. Is the way I look at it. And religion is always a touchy subject, but I was brought up Catholic, and I'd consider myself a Native American now. I don't all the religions that I've been exposed to, especially in this research, are are just control systems. Simply that. I won't say any more. And they just make this problem worse. They cover it up. They foster it in one way or another, and that's pretty much. I mean, other than Buddhism, something like that. But the both the Christian and Islamic faiths are not helpful towards this issue.
Collaboration of the Vatican.
Abrahamic.
Sorry, I have to interject on that because to bring it more the Pope has now relieved clerics of their obligation to report child abuse. Did you hear that?
Well, he's a real expert at playing both sides. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff that he's done, and then the other stuff that and it's just people are going to have to get beyond these ideologies and these control systems and just your own intuition of what is right. And with that, talking about the dissonance again, I mean, in every human heart knows that this is the worst thing on the face of the earth, and we need to start acting and make our actions match what our insides are feeling about this, and however we have to do it. But it won't be turning, to the Pope or, the local imam to solve this problem. We're going to have to do it as individuals, as human beings, and, rise above, all these ideologies.
I felt a possibility of that last week in missing DC girls. But I see very little transparency.
Hey, Elle, you're a little bit muffled right now.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Jake. By the way, you keep cutting out from my ears. I don't know if anyone else is having that experience.
I had that a couple times, and I just heard you were muffled. That's just my.
We're asking a lot of a free program that survives on surveillance. All these VPNs and all these things we're going through.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we're getting through enough for people to make sense of what we're saying. But
I'd like to at least draw the line one more time to missing DC girls, missing DC teens.
Yes.
Bring back our teens.
Yes.
That is the same damn thing. And there's a division, at least online, where some real hate speech is flowing very freely. It's a real dirty place, virtually as well as in reality, on this plane. And it's necessary for us to reject the division that would be put upon us by No Whites Allowed, Black Lives Matter meetings, and unite as a human family against this horrendous and gigantic task we face. No administration could do this without the demand of the people. Simply impossible.
Yeah, and people like Martin Luther King knew that.
Yes.
You're not going to crack something this big without everybody, and that's the whole system is designed. The what's going on in the political parties, and we've been socially engineered, and this has been designed to polarize everybody, and it's worked incredibly well. But the cracks are forming in the dam because, I always say, the better angels of man or women will have the final say, and Mother Earth will have the final say over all this technology and everything else that they're doing. So I think we're moving, and I've been watching this for a long time. I've been around for a long time, and as far as cautious hope, that's the way I feel right now, because I haven't seen anything like this, and just talk about Dr. Phil, briefly. I mean, that if you haven't seen that, Google Dr. Phil and child trafficking. It's on YouTube. He did it's the first mainstream portrayal of this network, and that is the network. And I'll before I go, if I have time, you guys let me know. I'd like to read just a portion of that Finder's report. It's the same network that this woman was trafficked in. This is the one that needs to come down. When this comes down, Dr. Cynthia McKinney has said it. She said it the other day. When this comes down, both the Democratic and Republican parties will fail. And that's what needs to happen. I mean, you can't build on abomination and corruption, and if it comes down, it comes down, and we'll replace it. We'll get along.
And for reference, Dr. Cynthia McKinney was a congresswoman who you can see her on YouTube calling out DynCorp, a government contractor to this day, who has a very dirty story once you look at their name online, hiring the Bachabazi in Afghanistan, sticking money into teenage boys' pants like it's a garter, lap dances. I mean, my God, what didn't we know from that party? In any case, she's calling out DynCorp for human trafficking in the Senate a decade ago, waiting for us to show up. Look her up, Dr. Cynthia McKinney.
JT, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2010 you were injured in the line of duty and you retired.
Yes, I did.
Did that accelerate to a certain extent your research, or did it change the how did that contribute to your work?
It's been an interesting 6 years. I just kind of sadly noted that anniversary just the other day of my retirement. Initially, it accelerated it then, and the really what's been holding me back. I mean, I came up here. We moved out of Florida into the mountains of Southwest Virginia. Beautiful spot. I'm very blessed to have found a little piece of nature up here, and I was so excited about that. I was a Florida boy in the mountains, taking this little cart thing. It's called the Polaris, up the hill to see the autumn leaves, and I made it up fine. And I thought I was going as slow as I could possibly go on the way down, and I had an accident. The thing accelerated, and I was ejected from it, and I ended up having 4 surgeries in the last 5 years. So that kind of put a damper on what I was doing, but I'm physically a lot better now, and so I'm trying to channel my my new or better physical health into some action on this. But initially, before that accident, I was actually still involved on Twitter. We had this little it was a Ustream live show that we were talking about it, and had some pretty funny, and I'll just put this out there for anybody, and everybody should watch this too. We were talking about the Franklin scandal, and on YouTube it's called Conspiracy of Silence. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. It's a documentary that was done by Yorkshire Television about the Franklin scandal, and the other must-see thing on which pulls in the whole gamut of the intelligence agencies is called the MENA Connection, and it's about the CIA operation flying cocaine into Mena, Arkansas, which gives you some more context to the whole thing. But I was doing stuff like that, but I've been seriously physically marginal for several years now. But I'm in the past few months seems like I'm moving in the right direction.
That's good to hear. So, I mean, how do fellow colleagues in the past and even the present, how do they respond to some of your truths? Are your colleagues generally supportive? Are they shocked? Is there not a way to get a critical mass of them to follow your lead? Perhaps that's what you've been trying to do, but what kind of reactions do you generally get from firefighters and policemen when you discuss your work?
That's been the biggest hard pill to swallow for me in this whole episode is, I would say, better than 50% of the firefighters in this country, maybe as high as 60 or 70, accept the government version of events on 9/11. I've talked to he's a famous fire chief, Alan Brunacini. He's in fire engineering. I mean, the guy is just knows, he's like one of my heroes, and he has somewhat of an open mind about it, but that should tell you, right there, with all and anybody who's been to fire school, and maybe I don't even think you'd have to take a building construction class, can look at Building 7 and that's impossible. The physics do not add up, but you still have this dissonance that they're just not going to accept it. It's too horrible, and that's very hard for me to take, and I just have to, it's something I deal with on a daily basis. But there has been some progress made, but guys like Eric Lawyer and Richard Gage with Architects and Engineers, I mean, they've been fighting this for that's not the battle I'm going to fight anymore, and I don't think that's kind of, with the whole gamut of problems that, maybe their eyes will be open, because when the child trafficking really breaks, I think that will break through all that other dissonance, and then you'll have people on board. I don't think it's a productive battle to go to try to change people's minds that are just made up,
Right, and that was my next question, was how does that same dissonance apply to the child trafficking issue? Like, how many police officers that you presented evidence to, what percentage of the police amount of police that realized there was such an epidemic of child abuse going on? I would imagine, how could people sleep at night? Like, what kind of reaction do you get from NYPD and other police officers who maybe start to realize that this is an epidemic?
And can I ask one other question? Are they themselves pressured into accepting what's going on and threatened with their own children being abducted?
Well, absolutely. But when you've got a guy like, and I'm hoping he'll come on here and speak with you guys, and I'm sure he would. I've actually talked to him about it, and he expressed his willingness. He's a little, you might have to tape it, or because the guy's 80 years old. His name's Jim Rothstein. He's a retired NYPD detective. He's researched. To me, he's the number one authority on this in the United States. He's now the mayor of a small town in Minnesota. He has installed an anti-child trafficking ordinance in his locality, and I want to make that and I'm going to make that through L available to you guys, that anybody can do this. I mean, you can go to your mayor, your locality, and institute, this ordinance and attack it from the bottom up. I mean, there's so many different ways, that we can be effective in this. But so at any rate, to get back to your question, when you've got a guy with the just respect that Jim Rothstein has for his career and his work, and you've got guys that aren't buying it, but it's becoming so prevalent now, and there are many arrests being made. The progress that's being made now, a lot of these police officers are coming around. And I really think the police as an organization are probably more receptive to the child trafficking epidemic than the firefighters are to anything that has to do with 9/11. That's just my opinion. So that's a good thing. And the more we're talking about it, the more every day, I mean, even locally here in Southwest Virginia and Tennessee, it's like every day there's somebody being charged. So there is good work being done out there, and the majority. And even when we talk about these intelligence agencies, this is a small segment of these agencies. I mean, these are compartmentalized, above top secret groups, and it's not the entire CIA, it's not the entire FBI, and as you go through and you research this, it wasn't the Customs Service and the finders. This guy did a report. He reported on it. He was going to break this ring up, but he got called off by a small group within the CIA. So I think law enforcement is really coming around in a big way, and you're going to see a lot more arrests and a lot more involvement on every level by these officers.
About Mr. Mayor Officer Rothstein, by the way, I just want to add, this is a man who's been fighting this problem for 5 decades.
Yes.
50 years he's been fighting this fight. And now he's taken his town and decided he's making his stand there. I find that so moving. And it would be a tremendous honor to speak with him. And, I'm sure he's one of the ones who's been waiting for us It would be
Absolutely.
wonderful, wonderful to hear him.
Absolutely. I hope he can come on. And like I said, his only limitation would probably be the time, because he's like, I think he may be 80, above 80 now, so, and he has full days. I mean, if I can catch him at 9 o'clock before he goes out, I'm lucky, because he's on the move all day, but we'll work on that. But I will get you the information. And there's another great, he shared something with me that's, he considers confidential, but I think in the context of what you're doing, he'd have no problem sharing that too. It was a report he did for Congress years ago about this, and it names names, and
And speaking of Congress, since you've both discussed how this extends into the elite power structures, it extends into, the government, it extends into Congress, probably, CEOs. What can we do, and what are people trying to do to try and not only just bust the smaller entities, but how are we going? You said that this will take down the Democrats and the Republicans. What kind of I'm sure there's massive resistance for this gaining traction. So what can we do, and what is being done to try and crack this at a elitist level, to try and bring down that tiers of this?
I just want to bring up a connection. I don't know who is not aware of Missing Kids, the NCMEC organization, but they are, from all I can read, a virtually untouchable DOJ program. And they are actually also the Amber Alert program. And the Amber Alert is known to you because they employ convicted child trafficker and protectee of the Clintons, Laura Silsby Gaylor. I just want to mention that their congressional representative was Representative Mark Foley, who you might recall as having been forced to resign as someone who had been discovered to be grooming the teenage boys in the PAGE program, which was shut down in D.C. anyway after that scandal. Not to mention, again, Dennis Hastert was third in line to the presidency. Dennis Hastert has gone to jail for raping boys and now has the temerity, the gall to sue them for saying they got a settlement. My God. I mean, didn't Dick Cheney shoot somebody in the face? Isn't he available? Like, what in the hell? But the problem is that NCMEC is an incredibly powerful and incredibly well-connected organization, as I see it. What do you think, JT?
That's all great points that you brought up. To me, and my humble opinion, and from what I've seen and what I'm trying to do now, and I hope you guys do it, and I hope everybody does this, Kendall and that story on Dr. Phil, and Dr. Phil's, whatever you think about him, he put his life at risk putting that on the air, because these people don't play, okay? And everything, all my efforts in the next week or so, and I'll be in touch with you guys, is to establish a contact with that show, because the people, and I sat down on Twitter the other night just figuring out, people that I follow and that follow me, and so there's a couple with their followers, not my followers, but with their followers, like Cynthia McKinney, like there's a bunch of them. I just, I'm old and my mind doesn't work too well. I can go down but there are millions of people that are supporting this, in one way or another. And my action is going to be to make some kind of inroads with the show, to make some kind of connection that can channel all this support into getting that case prosecuted, protecting that victim, because she's in danger too, and making sure, it's already out there. And this is to me the biggest thing that's happened on this issue in years, to have this on a mainstream television show being taken seriously. I'm reaching out to the LAPD detective that was on that show too. I'm going to try to do that through Jim Rothstein. So we'll keep you updated on that. But just you got to strike while the iron's hot. There's all these different areas. There's Pizzagate and this, and I personally think where there's smoke, there's fire. There, but there's a lot of COINTEL going against that. There's they might have brought it out before they had the goods, whatever it is. But this we know. We know this woman was on Dr. Phil. I know from my research and everybody else that I've talked to, that's the network. That's the one that needs to come down. It's already on national TV by a respected, show. That's where we need to channel our efforts. And that could, there's all these holes forming in the dam, and that's the one that I see that's leaking the most water now. And if we can get behind that in a meaningful way, we might be able to bring that sucker down.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Everyone who hasn't seen that Dr. Phil clip, her name is Kendall. What was it, a week ago?
It aired on the 21st of March. You can see clips from the show on their website, but the whole show is pirated on YouTube, so you can which is fine. It needs to. They need to get that whole show out to as many people as possible that can see it. Oh, did you hear the Netherlands canceled the Dr. Phil show after that aired?
No.
It was offensive to all of their child predators.
Yes.
Good God. Right?
That's what we're up against.
Yeah, where is Ben Swan?
Yeah, did he ever make it back on the air? Well, this is troubling, but it's informative. We're so thrilled. We got about 3 minutes left, Mr. Taylor, and we're so thrilled that you came on here. I feel like we could talk for another 3 hours at least on this. All of us. It'd be fantastic. I mean, hopefully maybe we can have you back on in due time and talk more about this. I guess, if anyone has any final thoughts, particularly Mr. Taylor, if there was any, final statements you wanted to make about, I mean, you're involved with so many different activist causes. How do you have enough hours in the day to do all this?
Well, being old and beat up helps, and my mom always told me I had a perfect face for radio, so I fulfilled her prophecy or whatever tonight, and I'm just very grateful that you guys are talking about this, and I'm honored to be among, which I consider the generation that is going to make the changes that need to be made. So we'll be in touch. You need me, anything you guys need, I'm there for in this cause or any other.
Thank you so much.
That's our closing music, Mr. Taylor. Thank you so much, LD. Thank you so much for being here as well. And Evie, as always, thank you. So we're at war again, everyone. Remember, we still work to help each other.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.